Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good whatever time it is, wherever you are, whoever you might happen to be. Welcome once again to Full Fat Spoiler Chat, the show in which we talk about a recent piece of nerdy entertainment. And we talk about it in depth. We look at what's good about it, what's bad about it, what we liked, what we didn't like, what the themes, the tones, the larger messages of the piece were. And tonight we are going to be talking about The Legend of Vox Machina, the animated series on Prime Video that just wrapped up last Friday. That was an adaptation of the very first D&D campaign of the webcast Critical Role. I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber. I am first-person shooter on Facebook as a cosplay photographer, Burley_adopter on Twitter, a couple of other places, doing a few other things. If you have not seen this series, The Legend of Vox Machina, and you don't like spoilers, you should probably wait until after you've seen it before you come back and watch this show on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook Live, wherever you might happen to be watching it otherwise. If you have seen it or you don't care about spoilers, then absolutely feel free to hang around, join us in the chat, talk about what you liked about this, what you think about my opinion about this might happen to be. And we look forward to seeing some of that pop up over the course of the next half an hour-ish. So, what is Legend of Vox Machina? I kind of laid it out in my introduction. It is an animated series, 12 episodes long, started back in early February, which is weird for a 12-episode series because they released 3 episodes per Friday. So it basically took a month for this whole thing to just wrap up. Strange release schedule even for Amazon. So it's like somewhere in between binging or weekly. But it worked. It is the story of the characters shown on your screen here, the team known as Vox Machina, a team of adventurers in a D&D world. It's based on the campaign that was webcast live, or recorded or live, I can't remember, by a bunch of voice actors under the title Critical Role. And basically all of these voice actors got together with Matt Mercer, who is a voice actor as well, was the game master or the dungeon master for the whole shebang, and you get to watch them play for a couple of hours, usually at a time, the campaign out in real time, or recorded depending on when it actually happened. Mercer created this world, Tal'Dorei, that is really interesting, very creative, and was as the DM, was essentially the voice of all of the NPCs, whereas the individual characters are voiced by specific voice actors that Mercer, they all sort of knew each other. Many of whom have like insane credit lists that go well beyond 400 on IMDb, individual roles. So this became insanely popular among D&D fans, not surprisingly, and wound up getting picked up by Geek and Sundry for a while, sort of branched off on its own. 2019, Mercer announced that they were doing a Kickstarter to create an actual animated series based on that very first campaign. It was just stupidly successful. One of the most successful fundraising campaigns ever on Kickstarter. And of course, the pandemic kind of got in the way for it to come out in any realistic time frame. But it finally dropped this past February. And again, just wrapped up this last Friday. So the animation studio is Titmouse, possibly best known for Metalocalypse, but also is the animation studio behind Big Mouth, which is kind of surprising. The animation doesn't look like anything that they've done. If you can see, the character designs look very much like Legend of Korra characters. And Titmouse had absolutely nothing to do with Legend of Korra. What was it? They had another one that really surprised me. Star Trek Lower Decks on Paramount Plus. They're the animation studio behind that. Again, doesn't look anything at all like this. Big Mouth and Lower Decks look nothing like each other. Crimson Dragon, welcome to the show. Again, we're talking Legend of Vox Machina, the animated series. I'm going to spoil the bejesus out of it. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want the spoilers, you should probably come back after you've seen it. But otherwise, welcome to the show, and feel free to weigh in on your opinions about it. Oh, your opinions about my opinions. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, the animation studio. The voice actors, I'm not going to run down the entire list. If you're familiar with Critical Role, particularly the first campaign, the Vox Machina campaign, then you know who all these people are. And I've already mentioned Matt Mercer, but there's a bunch of others. I will say that because of their names, and I guess because of Prime Video money behind this and so on, they got, in addition, portraying some of the characters that Mercer basically portrayed. Crimson Dragon, they remind me of Ruby, how the character design is. I don't know that I would go that way. I think it's way more like Legend of Korra. Ruby really looks like what it is. It's very super simplistic 3D animation. I don't think that that's what I would call this. But I can see it. The designs are very simple and clean. I'll give you that. And maybe the costume designs is maybe what you're talking about. That I can see as well. Some of the other character actors that voice actors they brought on: Carrie Payton, Indira Varma, Gray Griffin, Tony Hale, Felicia Day, David Tennant. And so that's where I'm going to start with the things that I like about the series. Let's start. The voice acting is number one. It is hands down the best thing about this series. First off, all of the people that portrayed or that played the characters in the campaign on Critical Role play their same characters. So they know these characters inside and out. They are all experienced voice actors, and boy, does it show. They do an excellent job. And then, of course, like I said, they bring in so many other incredibly talented characters. This blew my mind by the time I got further into, once I finished the series and then started looking up some of the information. And again, spoiler chat, we're talking spoilers. When they get to Whitestone, which is Percy's, the town of Percy's noble previous home. It's a horrible way to describe it. I'm not exactly sure what I was going to say there, but some of the good guys in that town that are helping them. Keeper Yenin is voice acted by Gina Torres, Firefly, etc., etc. Archibald is Dominic Monaghan, almost unrecognizable. Just awesome job. But on the bad guys' side, so Matt Mercer, his only role in this, even though he created the entire campaign and voiced all the other NPCs, is one of the two big bads of the episodes 3 through 10, or 3 through 12. Basically, almost all of it, except for the introduction to first two episodes. And that is the vampire Silas Briarwood. Gray Griffin, who I'd already mentioned, plays his wife Delilah Briarwood, Lady Briarwood. But then the other bad guys that are sort of on their team, as it were. Anna Ripley is voice acted by Kelly Hu. Professor Anders is Stephen Root. Loving that. And Duke Vedmir, and I should have recognized this one, is Rory McCann, the Hound from Game of Thrones himself. Just, like I said, an amazing, amazing voice cast. And all of them, all the way down to like Felicia Day's character is called Bandit 2. So, even the characters with the absolute least things to say are voiced by really outstanding people. The other thing is the character designs. Now, granted, these are from previous character designs that had been made for, there was a comic book series and so on. And as Crimson Dragon sort of pointed out, simplified for making it possible for them to do, the animation. But they look like the characters, but they're still very good. Excellent character designs. One of the, I don't know that I grabbed a really exciting. Well, this one is kind of, and again, spoilers. This is from later on. Scanlan, the bard, at one point takes a potion that eventually, like all of his potions, either screw up or take time. Eventually enables him to breathe fire. And this is him breathing the fire. The animation, the action animation throughout this thing is really good. Again, spoilers, getting way off further on near the end of the series. This is Keyleth finally, basically, getting the stones to really let her powers loose, and essentially creating a little mini sun. So it's really beautiful looking design, and the animation around this, the swirl effects, everything was really well done. So I really liked the animation. I thought it was solid. I initially was quite fond of the mix of humor and drama in the series. I'll get to why that's changed when we get into some things I didn't particularly like. But in the first 3 episodes, in particular, it's very dramatic. There's some really emotional, heart-rending scenes in the first couple of episodes, and an awful lot of humor. And the humor is very adult, foul, crude language humor, dick and fart jokes, as they say in the industry. And it was refreshing, and it's gory. There's lots of blood and gore, and heads being crushed and eyeballs spurting out, things like that. Which again, in an animated series with a look that's very much like The Legend of Korra, to see that kind of adult treatment, really cool. Again, particularly in those first 3 episodes. The first 2 episodes are a sort of standalone introduction called the Terror of Tal'Darai, which is about them fighting a dragon. And then the 3rd episode is sort of the start of the entire campaign itself, which is the dealing with the people who basically killed Percy's parents and usurped his home and drove him away, and etc. The Briarwoods. So yeah, I like that mix, at least initially in those first few episodes. Let's see, what else? There's not really much to comment about the background music. It's completely unobtrusive. Like, I don't even know that I would have noticed it. So I can't think of a particular tune other than Scanlan's songs, which is another thing I'll get into. So there's not much else to say about that. The direction is up and down, but never bad. There are some episodes that are clearly directed very well. Interesting shot composition ideas of where the camera angle should be. Some that aren't, some that are pretty just standard, where's the one of... All right, I can't find them. I guess it's easier here, or I didn't actually put it up in the. I guess I didn't put that up on the screen. All right, there's. So here's an example of a good shot. Vex and Vax bump into each other during a fight, and you can. It's a lower camera angle, even though the point of them is looking sort of embarrassed at each other. That's not It's not like they just did a close-up on the face of the two of them looking at each other kind of embarrassed. It's an interesting shot. And then there are others that are literally just, oh, here it is. I did put it up here. And again, spoilers near the end, when Pike shows up in an astral form, as it turns out, in Whitestone to help them fight off these hordes of undead that the Briarwoods have raised, Grog has been missing her terribly, and picks her up and gives her a big hug. But this is the first shot of that. It's just like literally the most static side view. I was drawing angles like this when I was 8. So it goes up and down. Generally good, sometimes really good, never terrible, but just sometimes really just flat and uninspired, like this shot here. And I guess that's pretty much what I would have to say I really like about it. Not sure that I have a lot of, well, I'll get into the dislikes, and I do have some. So if you go to nerdcaliber.com, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can read my review that I wrote after I got a chance to see the first 3 episodes before they aired. And I gave it at that point an 8 out of 10. I thought the humor was done really well, even if it was a little crude and, in some cases cringe-inducing. But I wrote that off to the idea that that's what the character is supposed to be. He's the cringe character, the Scanlan, the bard. As the series ran along, by the time it reached probably episode 6, I'd gotten so tired of Scanlan, and the fact that at that point almost the only jokes they were telling were crude jokes, dick and fart jokes, basically. And I just got so tired of it. Even, Seth MacFarlane, Family Guy and so on, knows that you've got to throw in other stuff than just crude jokes. Otherwise, nobody's going to stick around. And there was one, I can't remember what the joke was. There was one joke between Vax and Grog that Vax said something and Grog just had a real super quick, one-word comeback that wasn't crude, and it was like, okay. I laughed. I mean, that was one of the few actual laugh out loud moments. And the problem is they rely on that humor to break the otherwise pretty dark drama that's going on here. I mean, Percy's parents were killed in front of him. He thinks his sister was killed in front of him, shot with arrows. He wants revenge so badly he's been possessed by a demon. It's dark. He shoots a kid, basically, the coachman for the Briarwoods, because he wants to kill everybody and everything associated with the Briarwoods, and anybody else who helped them kill his family and take over his family keep and lands and so on. It's real dark. And by the way, it is also visibly real dark. Aside from Pike glowing here, and some of the after effects of the undead, burning up from her clerical, goodness magic, this is the color palette. This is the brightness of the show from episode 4 on, essentially. And I just got tired of the dark. Light a freaking torch. It just, this is one of the brighter scenes near the end. And again, this is basically because it's all over at this point, essentially. This is a pretty typical look of Percy, in his demonic form, when he's still mostly Percy before the demon really takes over. That's it. This is how bright the screen is, that you're expected to watch for, well, let's see, from episode 4 on, so 8, so 4 hours worth of entertainment. you're going to be looking at the screen, particularly if you try to watch it during the day like this, which is what I was doing. I get it, and we'll get into that in tone, when we talk later, a little bit later on about tone and theme and so on. But to ease that up, you need humor. And having the humor be essentially Scanlan saying filthy stuff, or there's only so many times you can watch Scanlan give somebody the finger. Now, granted, this was a pretty satisfying version of that when he got away from Vedmir. But there's only so many times you can watch him do that and go, "Oh, that joke was funny," again and again and it stops being funny. Now, the weird thing is, I looked at some of this information. The first 2 episodes were written by a very experienced animation writer. Wrote, Star Wars Resistance, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a whole bunches and bunches of stuff. Going all the way back to Marvel Avengers Assemble and so on. And the 3rd episode was written by somebody with a very, very similar track record. As a matter of fact, the first 2 episodes, this guy, Brandon Auman, was a staff writer on Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go, which is a super deep cut, and wrote 17 of the episodes of the ultimate 47 episodes of that series. So, like I said, experienced. Him and then this Eugene Sun, who was on a lot of other things that the Brandon Auman also wrote on. And then after that, the writers just sort of were all over the place, including a bunch of the later episodes were written or co-written by some of the voice actors themselves, Sam Riegel and Travis Willingham. Now, Riegel has written a lot of stuff, although nothing really that anybody would have known. And Willingham has written almost nothing. One of the critical episodes, episode 7, is written by Riegel and Willingham alone, with no support from any other experienced writers credited. We don't know what other support they got, and it shows. This is from that episode. And it focuses an awful lot on Scanlan trying to create a distraction by burning Vedmir's estate. And so we get a lot of Scanlan doing Scanlan jokes, which by episode 7, I was done with. So, yeah, the humor misses way more than it hits after episode 3. The overall look of it is just literally the look, the amount of light that hits your eyes is just way too dark. Which isn't a criticism of the dark tone. That's different. And it's pretty tropey. It's a revenge story against vampires. And to create some sort of dramatic tension, the cleric, who has turn undead spells and all the other stuff that you have a cleric along for, is not in the show until from episode 5, end of episode 4, until she comes back in that in episode 9 as an astral projection. So during the first half of the build-up to the fight against a vampire and his bride who deals in black magic, the one character who would actually be able to deal with that properly has been put aside because she's having a crisis of faith, essentially, and can no longer connect to the Everlight, the good power in the world. I mean, that's kind of lazy. Either ramp up the power of the bad guys or come up with some other way individually. You basically just took the one character who could have made this an 8-episode series and went, yeah, nope, we're going to put them aside for 4 episodes. 5 in this case. Yeah, so, and then a lot of the other stuff is, again, it's like, okay, there's vampires, so of course they raise undead. And now, I'll give them, some of them were pretty creative. The giants, the undead giants, were really interesting. The Percy's ancestors in the crypt, when they come alive, but when they are raised as undead, that's pretty weird. Of course, the fact that they just happen to come out of the crypt when our team is in the crypt is a little, At that point, Lady Briarwood had raised every dead thing in the entire town into an undead. They would have counted. And there wasn't anything that said that only the presence of a living thing triggered them from, Anyway. That's kind of a nitpick, but, it's sort of an example of how sort of tropey and easy ultimately the writing became. And there were no consequences. So in those first 2 episodes, almost no consequences. In the first 2 episodes, a young boy winds up getting killed by a dragon, and it's treated well, it's written well, it's directed well, it's pretty heart-wrenching. But very quickly after that, you realize that there are no real consequences for any of these people. They all make it out of this first campaign. And you know it. And so anytime any of them are put into what seems like, or when they are in fact allegedly killed on screen, they're not actually dead. They get healed immediately in the next episode, even if it's healed lightly, but they're still healed. And it's like, okay, oh my God, they just stabbed Keyleth. No, I mean, yeah. And again, seemingly right through the heart, but no, she's gonna be okay. So there's no consequences in here, and with the gore and the foul language, they're kind of, you would think, going for a, Legend of Korra meets The Boys, or Invincible. Invincible, there are meaningful and permanent deaths. Certainly in The Boys, there are meaningful and permanent deaths. And very quickly, you get the impression that this is going to make you think it's going to be that serious and isn't. So yeah, those are primarily my main criticisms. The humor wears itself out within 3 episodes, for the most part. It's way too dark looking to be entirely enjoyable. Much of the story becomes predictable, trite, and trope filled. So yeah, it's that. I'm not going to get out of this by the end of this thing with that same 8 out of 10. Let me tell you that. So themes, tone, messages. So tone, I talked to, it's dark. It is dark. It is the tale of someone, Percy, who is so hell-bent on revenge, he willingly lets a demon possess him. I mean, they fudge around with whether or not he knew that the demon was possessing him, or, yeah. This is a world full of magic and demons. He would have known exactly what was going on. And he was allegedly one of the smartest people his professor has ever met. He would have known what's going on. And he plays that out for the most part. He kills an awful lot of the people he wants to kill, to get his revenge. Ultimately, he does not kill all of them because that would basically allow the demon to take him over permanently. And that's pretty much what the real final struggle is. So when Lady Briarwood, who isn't killed at the same time her husband finally does, that's when Keyleth just lets loose with all the basically sunlight and burns him up as a vampire. she is defeated, but they drag her along because her spell to try to summon the Whisperer in the Dark, this ancient otherworldly evil, was still ongoing, and they needed to know what she was doing, and they would try to stop her. They don't, but it doesn't really become what they think it is. It's just you know turns into this big spinning metal orb of energy, and she feels very betrayed by the Whisperer, because he was supposed to come in, wreck house. So the very ultimate, once they finally are, they've killed, or Percy has defeated the demon inside him, Orthax, and then it looks like he's about to kill Lady Briarwood, and as soon as that, it's like, oh no, she's still, she's still a danger. It's like, yeah, no, his sister turns out is alive, sort of betrays them, realizes she's being manipulated, turns back to their side. So his sister Cassandra, as soon as I said that, it's like, yeah, Cassandra's going to kill her. They've made it clear that Percy can't, so he's not gonna. They're not going to have, if I were writing that, Percy would have done it and then somehow managed to fight the demon into a stalemate, so the demon was still inside him, but he had general control of the situation. That would have made the story possibilities after that would have been just fantastic. But nope, they defeated the demon. And so Percy couldn't, be the one to kill her. And so, of course, Cassandra's going to kill her. I mean, she's carrying a sword anyway. And, yep, Fork, Cassandra kills her. Okay, all right. Again, it's just so predictable. But I was talking about tone. So, yes, it's a very dark tone. It's a very adult, not just in violence, but in sexuality, in crude language. They drop more F-bombs than a Samuel L. Jackson movie. It for no reason. And having secondary characters who are, allegedly well-respected, upstanding leaders of, the Royal Guard and so on, dropping F-bombs like Vox Machina does, is like, and again, just for sort of the shock humor appeal. It's unfortunate. Message, I don't know that there's a message that comes out of this other than sort of the general one. Your friends, no matter how, whatever problems they're dealing with, they're still your friends and you should be there to support them. And I support that. I think that's a good message to come out of this. And generally revenge is not a good thing. Seeking vengeance for a wrong is more harmful to you than any other way to treat that wrong. Also a good message coming out of this. And I particularly like the very specific one of Pike. She finally realizes that the reason she no longer has a connection to the Everlight is not from anything outside. It's her, and it's specifically because she doesn't believe she deserves it, because she hangs out and enjoys hanging out with this super rowdy, drunken, roughhousing, foul-mouthed group of people. And her view of being a good person is, there were finger quotes, but they were under, you couldn't see them, so good person, is that you can't do that. That's, and so that's why she essentially, subconsciously cut herself off from the Everlight. And eventually the Everlight makes her realize that that is what happened. And then essentially says, yeah, that's not what defines a good person. So get over it. And she does. And that's how she comes back in the last 3 episodes. And I think that's a good message too. That what a lot of people describe as moral behavior is not necessarily good behavior. And you can be a good person and still run up against the mores and traditions of the society that you're in to an extent. You know, if she was out there enjoying killing people as much as Grog, the half giant, enjoys killing people, that would be a problem. But Mr. Krakowian, welcome to the show. I am just about in the last few minutes of talking about the Legend of Vox Machina. Again, if you haven't seen it, I've pretty well spoiled it at this point. But if you have, feel free to throw in with your opinions. I'm about to wrap up. So as I was saying, tone, it's really dark. And I just don't mean visibly dark, which I've already complained about. It is a dark, at times brutal and gory story that is attempted to be lightened up by humor that ultimately fails after the first few episodes. Message, good solid messages about friends and supporting your friends no matter what they're going through. And that's pretty much it. So do I recommend it? And where does it now fall on my scale of 1 to 10? And as I mentioned, Mr. Krakowian, at the beginning of this, I reviewed this when the first 3 episodes, when I got access to the first 3 episodes just before they dropped back at the beginning of February. And at that time, I gave it an 8 out of 10 based on those first 3 episodes. Now it is about as mid as you can get. I'm going to be generous because of the amazing voice actors and give it a 6 out of 10. It probably doesn't deserve anything higher than a 5 out of 10 if it wasn't for those voice actors. But they bump it up at least a notch. So yeah, 6 out of 10. And yeah, I'd recommend it, particularly if you're a Critical Role fan. You're going to just, it's just Critical Role fan service left and right. You're going to love all the characterizations, the look of all the people that you've loved to hear, played out in those D&D campaigns. If you're a really good fan of what seemed to be a really interesting world in the first 3 episodes, still go into it, except that it becomes a really bog standard undead vampire campaign, D&D campaign. And that's, again, that becomes a bit of a problem. But yeah, I would say an unqualified or a qualified recommendation. 6 out of 10. Which is too bad because I really liked those first 3 episodes and I thought it was going places that it just didn't go. So that's it, folks. We're going to throw out real quick the promos. If you're not watching us on Twitch right now, and if you have a Twitch account, love to have you go to twitch.tv/nerdcaliber and think about following us there. Also, if you want to visit us at Patreon, patreon.com/nerdcaliber. Take a look at the 3 tiers we have. The lowest one is $2. We'd love to have you as a patron. Support our content development at cons that are hopefully coming back. And that's pretty much it. Upcoming, still not sure what we're doing for Monday on Anime Octane, but I'll have that posted up in the next couple of days. Next Tuesday, of course, is our Nerd Week Live. The news of 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, which caused shows to go way over an hour, had dropped off last week. We managed to wrap that up in just under an hour. And so far, I haven't put a ton of stuff into the queue just yet. So next week, Crimson Dragon, The Legend of Vox Machina Forever. Good for you. Again, I loved the first 3 episodes. I really wish it held up for me. I know a lot of people who do feel that it held up. I'm just not one of them. So good for you, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. I am looking forward to, I'm assuming they're going to get a season 2. This thing was just so insanely popular. I am looking forward to where they go with an adaptation of their next campaign. I'd like to see them take some of the criticism about some of the writing problems and the humor problems and so on and take that to heart. But we'll see. But next Thursday, On our next Full Fat Spoiler Chat, we will be doing the Cuphead show on Netflix. The series based on the really innovative game Cuphead, which has the same absolutely fantastic art style like the old Max Fleischer cartoons from the 1930s. So we'll see you at one of those upcoming shows. In the meantime, please stay safe. Everybody every municipality and state is relaxing their COVID restrictions. Feel free to do whatever you want. I will probably continue to be wearing a mask out in crowds anyway for a while, although no longer just generally outside, which I've been doing for the last few months. But you do you. As long as what you is not denying the value of masking or the vaccines. And if you haven't gotten all those boosters and everything, you should get all those, because they are looking at the fact that there will probably be a fourth booster before everything has completely played out. So please consider it, folks. It's the smart and the right thing to do for the people you love around you, not just your own health. Saying